Welcome to the Ascend Your Success podcast. Whether you're just starting out or are a veteran looking to grow your business, you're in the right place. Join us to learn how to achieve financial freedom while working and living life on your own terms. Hear valuable insights, strategies, and interviews with successful entrepreneurs. Get ready to achieve the success you've always dreamed of. Ready? Let's go.
What's going on, guys? My name is Wyatt and this is the Ascend Your Success podcast. And today I got my business partner, Jacob Ninan, with me, and we are moving along in this series called How to Get Started in Real Estate. And we talked last time about how to communicate with people properly. So we've been through vision and budgeting. We've been through leads, free leads and paid leads. We've been through how to communicate with those leads. Now let's talk about the different types of strategies that we can do. Now, there are a lot of different strategies when it comes to real estate, but if you are a new beginner, these are the strategies that we believe that you should be focused on. And as you get better and as you get more versed in doing these simple strategies, the bigger strategies and more complex strategies will come with that, right? So we've got wholesaling, flipping, seller financing, rentals, and wholesaling. And so, Jacob, talk us through like wholesaling and flipping real quick.
So, yeah, I think generally what most people would consider the entry-level investing, so to speak, would be wholesaling. If you haven't heard of wholesaling, I highly doubt you're listening to this and haven't heard somewhat about wholesaling. But for the general public, if you don't know, wholesaling is, it's really a term that crosses all industries. Like there's wholesalers in all kinds of different industries, not just real estate, but essentially you're buying low and turn around and selling to someone else at a markup. So with wholesaling in real estate, you're not actually selling the property, you're selling rights to a contract, right? So it's what we call assigning. So essentially if Wyatt was the seller and I found him and his property and was able to agree on a price, we'll just use round numbers. Let's say I got you to agree to sell your property for $80,000. I'm then going to turn right around and go try to find a cash buyer that's willing to buy my interest in that contract so that they can actually purchase the property. And for that, I'm going to charge them what's known as an assignment fee. Again, just using round numbers. I might find an end buyer and say, hey, I have this property that I'm assigning for $100,000. So I assign it to that buyer for $100,000 and then I make the middle, what's known as an assignment fee. So easy math is $20,000. Now don't get too excited. Doesn't always work out like that. We've had deals where we've assigned for, that much, way lower, way higher, all in between. Either way, that's the simple of it. Like we're not going to go too deep into the strategy itself. There's like any of these other strategies, there's tons of nuts and bolts that we can go into, but generally that's the gist of wholesaling. Again, the reason why it's such a good entry is because it doesn't really take any investment capital, so to speak, to wholesale a deal. You're not having to buy or purchase the property and have it or own it, or as we call in the real estate world, take it down. You're not having to actually take down a property and physically own it. You're not having to do any work to it. You're not having to be on the line for anything in terms of financially, but you are having to find the properties and then of course find the buyers. Probably one of the easiest ways I've taught people to quickly replace some income is wholesaling.
Yeah. I think it's a really good strategy, and one of my first deals was a wholesale deal. I think, number one, it's important to know that you're going to be direct to seller with the wholesaling method. Like you said, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts, but I do want to make sure that you completely understand this. So you're going to be direct to seller. You're going to get it under contract. You're going to assign it to an end buyer. Where do you often find your end buyers, Jacob? And I've heard this done both ways, and neither one of them are wrong, but we do it our certain way, and I want to teach you how we do it. Do you often try to find the house first or the build your buyers list first? I've heard it taught both ways. What do you do?
So you'll hear all the time people say, if you find a good enough deal, you'll find a buyer. I understand what people are trying to say, but I don't quite believe in that method. I feel like you should go ahead and start doing your research to find cash buyers, and you don't have to lie. You don't have to I've seen plenty of posts online and they almost have like a template, like you almost know what this person's doing. But I see plenty of posts where people say, hey, I have a property and such. If you're interested, hit me up. And really, that's just a way of getting a bunch of people to drop their numbers or emails because you threw out a popular county. But long story short, it is not that hard to start collecting information from buyers. The hard part would be vetting those buyers to make sure they're actual buyers and not other wholesalers that are just trying to get your deals sent to them so they can try to sell to their buyers. Daisy chaining is what that's known as, but we're not going to go into that. We're not going to go into that today. A, because I don't want to raise my blood pressure, but B, just because we're talking about surface level here with these strategies. But yeah, to your question, I personally think you should start building the buyers list first. And you can do it both at the same time, right? You can do this at the same time. So I just believe you should have some form of a buyers list so that when you do secure a deal, you can immediately start marketing to those buyers day one versus getting the deal under contract and then turning around and trying to find a buyer, which is, I'll point out the way that I did it to start. So I'm not speaking from a place of what my opinion is on just like, this is what I think you should do because I just feel that way, but it's because I did it the other way. And thankfully I did have the first 2 deals we ever did were really good deals. So it wasn't that hard to move them. But what I'll say is in the process of doing that, I cost myself money because got the deals and so quickly wanted to find a buyer, and whoever hit me up first, I just went with. Meanwhile, I probably we definitely shorted ourselves thousands of dollars, hindsight looking back. But had I taken the time to build a list and have, a good list of buyers, if I would have blasted those deals today and would have gotten 10, 20 people responding, now I know like, oh, wow, I'm onto something here. And like, let's schedule these. And I'm saying I'm telling you to sit here and price gouge people, but we are in a world of real estate where it does really boil down to highest and best, unless you have what we call like VIP buyers where you have a relationship, they can close. There's no question marks on whether this person's legit. I value those things over money. Like I value repeat business and good business than I do hearing someone say they're going to give me more money. But regardless, we would have made a lot more money going that route with the buyers list, building it first. And you don't have to spend 2 years on a buyers list. We're talking about making some Facebook group posts, collecting. I mean, you could easily in our market collect 50 to 100 emails like that within a couple of days. So, yeah.
And I just want to give my side of it too, is I started the opposite way. I started looking for deals and then I put those deals on Facebook, and then that's how they would go. And to your point, I think I think it's important to do both, because I don't know what your percentage, if you even know it, of deals that go off of your buyers list versus your just putting them on Facebook and selling them. But if you got both, then you're bound to have more offers. Like your conversation earlier about how do you get more deals is more up to bats, right? Yeah. So the more people that you reach out to, the more likely it's going to be that you get an offer. So most of ours go off of Facebook.
Yeah, we have a cadence within our business, which I'm not going to go into, but as you get into this and you build the list, you're going to have a certain way that you blast it. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, VIPs, those might be people you're on a good base, like a good contact basis with. You can call them, text them personally. Then you have your email blast. Then you might go trickle down to Facebook and blast it out there to everyone, people you may or may not have ever done business with, that kind of thing. But yeah, there's plenty of avenues to move the deal. But I definitely think you should start shaking hands and making connections with buyers. Networking events is another good one, but I'll digress on that. Flipping, fix and flip, fixer upper, I think is probably the most popular and sexy, for lack of a better word, strategy that anyone ever comes in thinking they want to do. I mean, with the popularity of HGTV, Joanna and Chip Gaines, Chip and Joanna Gaines with the Fixer Upper shows and all the other tons of Fixer Upper shows. I mean, I think we can all agree it's pretty cool to watch the transformation. Like that's really cool. I will be the first to tell you that flipping houses is nothing like what you see on TV, whether it's dramatized or made to look easy or not. It's nothing like that. You'll quickly find out. But Again, probably the most popular strategy that people come in saying that they want to do. I started my journey out that way, like because of those things I mentioned before with seeing it on TV and that being brought and highlighted to me by a family member. But yeah, so probably not the easiest point of entry into the real estate world. Wholesaling definitely going to be the easiest one. And I say easy, the cheapest, like it doesn't cost you. Wholesaling technically isn't easy. I'd say flipping houses is what I used to tell people is wholesaling is less risky, but harder. Flipping is it's risky, more risky, but easier because if you're the flipper, you can find your own deals or leverage wholesalers' deals. If you're the wholesaler, you're just leveraging your own deals. Also, the risk factor, wholesaling, you don't have any financial burden because you're not actually buying the property. Whereas the flipper, you're buying the property, you're paying to renovate it, you're paying all the fees and things that are going on while you're holding it. So those are the two distinct differences with those, in my opinion. But flipping, I mean, yeah, it's you buy a house that's most likely distressed or needs some work. You renovate the property, to what we call the standard of like what the comps are. Like, guys, if you buy a house in a neighborhood where the average price point is 300 grand and everybody there that has a nice house has, hardwood floors and granite countertops, that doesn't mean you go buy the house and put in marble throughout all the floors and like gold counters. Like, doesn't make sense. Like, like tell the people I teach, like, follow the comps. That doesn't mean you don't do little things to stand out to make your product a little bit better, but you generally follow the comps. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to go dump $100,000 in finishes in a $200,000 price range house. It just makes no sense. Now, if you go to $1 million homes, yeah, you're going to spend that type of money. But yeah, you're buying the house low at a distressed price point. You're fixing up the house, and then you're turning around and listing it on the market, and your end buyer is 99% of the time a owner occupant, a family, or somebody that wants to buy the home to live in it. And at that point, those types of buyers are not really concerned about equity, so to speak. They're just looking for a home that they like, that's fairly priced for the area that they can live in. So yeah, generally that's the surface level about flipping.
Yeah, and I know what's going through everybody's heads right now. There are multiple questions. Everybody's flying off the hinges. Right? I don't have money to do that. I don't have the money to flip a house, right? Don't worry about that. We're going to talk about that. How do I even know what to do to a house? What's a comparable, right? What is ARV? So we're going to be talking about those questions on the next series. Right now, we're just talking about the high level strategies. But we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how to run numbers and things like that. But I do think we need to spend just a second talking about how do I know what to do to the house, right? And so we talk about looking at the comps, but we can go on Zillow and we can look at what's recently sold, and we can base our rehab or our remodel off of those pictures and what they've done to get it to sell. But, I don't know any contractors. I don't know what that's going to cost me, right? So, like, one of the things that when I first got started, I was lucky that I had a mentor who done fixing flips quite a bit, and he was able to let me use his people. I reached out to people on Facebook, and you have this thing called a due diligence period within your first like 10 to 15 days of being under contract with that property. And so what you need to do during those due diligence periods is bring contractors through and get quotes and get prices so that you know exactly how much this is going to cost. Now, on the front end, we just estimate that I mean, I don't know how you do this, but we just base it off of more of a price per square foot, right? $30 a square foot in our market is going to get us paint, flooring, light fixtures, appliances, like a cosmetic rehab. If we need to do some plumbing, or if we need to fix some patches in the holes in the walls, if we need to do, this, that, or the other, we'll do what we call a cosmetic plus rehab, which is like $40 to $45 a square foot. If it's a gut, I mean, a full gut where we're taking it down to the studs, it can be $65+ a square foot, right? And so that's just to kind of get us in the ballpark of where we think we're going to have to be, so we can see where the seller is versus see where we are to see if it's going to be a good deal. but that's very important to understand as far as like rehabbing. Is that what you guys look at?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's generally the same thing. Going back to what you said earlier is like, how do I fix the house? How do I know what to do? Don't want to go too deep into this, but this is where community comes into play. Like he mentioned, he had a mentor who thankfully had flipped houses, and basically because he was your mentor, you instantly had access to that network. The confidence also, it's, the confidence and the access, but networking events, getting out in your community, I guarantee you wherever you're at, wherever you are right now, thinking about doing real estate, that there's local networking events and meetups where you can go meet people. Doesn't mean that just because they're at that meeting that they're certified or they're someone you can trust, but that's where, you're networking, you're getting people's information, and then you're getting referrals. You're checking their references, hey, who here you has used ABC remodeling, and you get their feedback, things like that. So yeah, you don't have to have some built-in system where your dad was a contractor for 45 years and you just decided, now I'm going to start flipping houses and I can trust my dad or something like that. That is the case for some people, but not the case for most people. So don't for those of you who have zero contacts, zero network, it's possible by some of the ways I just mentioned before. But as far as the process of the houses, yeah, we're just following the comps. We're doing what makes sense. And then, putting a little signature on it, giving a little touch here and there to give some personality to it so that when those people walk through that house, they don't just see the same stamp that they saw 3 houses ago. Like they see some uniqueness there. So, but with inside of the budget, because you don't want to kill the budget.
Right. Right. For sure. Well, let's talk about my favorite strategies. So those were more of the transactional, what we call transactional deals, right? Let's talk about the portfolio stuff. Just like straight out the gate, if you have listened to anybody else, if you've been on Bigger Pockets, if you've read the books, listened to the podcast, everything, this, that, and the other, you know about the BRRRR method, which is, it stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. You're leveraging somebody else's money, which we will talk about on one of the next episodes, is how to use other people's money to purchase and remodel all of these properties. Like we're not expecting you to come out of pocket and buy a house, like $120,000 house. So let's get that straight. We leverage 100% of other people's money all the time. Even still now, 6 years later, we leverage other people's money. I think it's a necessity to do whenever you get into real estate. And it's great if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars just sitting around to help you do that, but most of us don't do that, right?
Yeah, most of us didn't come from that.
Right.
Yeah.
So easy peasy rentals. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of rentals. I'm not a fan of being a landlord, man. I started out my first 5 houses, probably 4 of those were rental properties. Well, 3 of those were rentals, 2 of those were flips. And I got to experience what being a landlord was all about. And so we buy these properties using somebody else's money. It's a short-term loan. It's 4 months, 4 to 6 months. We renovate the property using somebody else's money. So get it livable, get it prepared for somebody to rent it. Then we find that renter, we find that tenant. We place that tenant in. We do background checks, this, that, and the other. Again, we're not getting in the weeds. And then we go to the bank and we refinance. That's the last R. We refinance that person their money back. So now we've got a property, we've got a tenant that's paying the mortgage, and then we just refinanced with a small local bank or a DSCR lender, depending on where you're at in your journey. And then that's how you get that person their money back. Same with flipping. Except when you go to flip and you sell the property, that's how the person gets their money back, right? That's how the lender gets their money back. But with rentals and buy and holds, you have to go to a bank and refinance. Oftentimes, you have to have good credit to be able to do that, because they're going to want to look at your credit, your income. They're going to look at everything as far as your local bank. So to buy and hold, traditionally, you have to have good credit, and so that's why I like seller financing. You can seller finance, and there's a lot that goes into seller financing. And what that is just creating win-win situations for you and the seller or you and the end buyer. You can seller finance on the front end of a deal. You can seller finance on the back end of the deal. But for the sake of time, we're going to talk about using the BRRRR method, buying these properties, and we're going to talk about seller financing on the back end. One thing I will note about on the front end is that's how you get around not having good credit. If you seller finance directly to the seller, you don't have to go to the bank to get so if you have bad credit, you can seller finance on the front end. So let's just talk about the back end real quick. On the back end, if you seller finance, instead of putting a tenant in there, you put a tenant buyer in, and you are no longer the landlord, but you are acting as the bank, right? So you go through the same process, buy it with somebody else's money, renovate it with somebody else's money, and then put it out for terms. Let's just say for easy math, you go in and you have this house for $100,000. If you go to rent it, you're going to put somebody in for $1,200 and you're going to make cash flow, right? But you still have to be a landlord. You still have to deal with tenants and toilets and HVACs and all this stuff. So if you're only making $200 a month net on a rental, at the end of the year, if an HVAC goes out, then all your cash flow is gone and that's it. Like you don't
And
don't make
that's
money.
like best case scenario. Like what you more so is like if you turn over one tenant in a year, like how much is it if they tear up the floors or mess up the paint? Like how much is that going to cost?
Right.
That's easily going to eat up your net cash flow.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. And that's why I'm not a fan of it, right? I figured that out, by doing it though. And we still have rentals now, but we do that at a different kind of level, which we'll talk about right towards the end. It's another strategy. But, when you're doing the seller financing, you say you get that same house and you've got it for $100,000, then you sell it on terms for $150,000 to somebody who's going to live in it and make you the mortgage payment. You say, hey, I'm going to sell it for $150,000. I want $15,000 down, which is a 10%, which is normally our minimum for a down payment. So you get that capital up front, which is great. And then we're selling it at an interest rate of anywhere from 10 to 12% interest. So the bank makes money on the interest. So are we. Some of you guys right now may be thinking, man, that's high interest rate. Well, somebody else is thinking, man, I'm never going to own a house unless I do this way, right? And so we prefer to look at it like we're helping people. Obviously, again, going back to one of our other series episodes, you run a business. You've got to make money. You've got to put food on the table for your family. You got to do what it takes to pay your employees, to pay your marketing, to do this, that, and the other, and that's what it takes. So,
Yeah, you're not forcing anyone to do this.
Yeah.
It's their decision, but really most people only care about the payment. As long as the payment makes sense, then that's all that really matters to them, right?
Yeah. And the cool thing about seller financing is the thing that I love the most is that the tenant buyer, they are liable for everything that happens in that house. So they're not calling me for toilets, HVACs, anything like that, pipes freezing in the winter. You don't call the bank for that. So you're not calling me for that. They maintain the property. They pay the insurance, the taxes. So it is a much more passive. It's not 100% passive, but it is much more passive than being a landlord and owning rental properties. And so seller financing is there's a lot of moving parts. I've actually got a presentation that we give away. I think we give it away in that free bundle too. So if we were talking about it on the last episode, if you guys want a free bundle that's got our scripts, our resources, our calculators, and this presentation that I've done on seller financing, then DM me or Jacob free bundle or something like that, and we'll get you the link for that so that you can go into more detail with that. But again, that's in my heart of hearts. That's what I love. I love that in real estate, that I can have that money coming in every single month. So we started out flipping and we were terrible at it, right? We were making a whole lot of money, but we were always robbing Peter to pay Paul on different projects and this, that, and the other. And we just had a hard time with it. And probably because we didn't have the setup that we should have had. We didn't invest in the business. We just were always trying to chase deals. But when we hit a hard stop and we looked back and we started holding properties, we got to a point with our cash flow where it didn't bother us if a project went over time, right? Or if a closing got pushed, because we still have that same amount of money coming in every single month. So it really helped us on the transaction side, on the flipping side, to where, it didn't hurt us as much as if a project went not like we planned. And it never goes like you planned. No matter what strategy you do, just get it out of your head that it's going to be a perfect thing, because it's not going to be exactly how you planned it either way you go.
Yeah. I mean, taking a house apart and then putting it back together, clearly there's going to be some hiccups here and there, and you just prepare the best you can for it. But no, like he said, having some predictable cash flow is important. And I mean, we've seen it time and time again with students and other members of the mastermind who have recently left their jobs. Let me back this up. Disclaimer, we're not telling people to leave their jobs, nor will I ever tell you need to leave your job. I might just throw out some questions that you have to answer in order to determine whether or not you're at a position or a place to do that. But we've had several students that have been able to leave their W-2s and go full-time investing because that's what they wanted to do. Now, we have plenty of people that have full-time jobs and invest, and they're 100% happy with that too because they love what they do. But either way, the more secure way that I've seen people do it was with the cash flow, because you're now the whole financial freedom, like you're dollar for dollar replacing what your job is producing, so that the day you leave, you're not turning around and going, okay, how do I produce income to replace what I just lost? You already replaced it with the passive income. And I will say, being somebody that didn't start in the realm of that and didn't really do the seller finance thing, looking at it now and seeing that with the students, it's super powerful, So yeah, it takes a little bit of time, and you can do it all, right? You can do it all at the same time. But the point is building it at the same time so that when you do have a slow month or you do have a project that gets away from you or sideways, it's not a super big stress because you got money coming in. So
For sure. So I know what you're thinking right now. Like, how do I decide what strategy I need to do? I mean, seller financing sounds awesome. Wholesaling sounds awesome. How do I do this? How do I decide what I want to do? And for that, I say, on the next episode, we're going to teach you how to run numbers. And the numbers, I think, this is something that I didn't understand when I first got was that I wanted to do nothing but rentals. Found out I hated that. Then I wanted to do flips and found out I wasn't that great at it. And then I started doing seller financing. But the thing is that when you run the numbers, you may not be able to get the property to a wholesale price. But if you say, I just want a wholesale, and if I can't get that price and I'm not doing it, then you're leaving money on the table, because you could do a flip.
Well, that's why I say wholesaling is harder, just less risky. So like if Wyatt's the seller finance guy and I'm the flipper, and then the wholesaler comes along and we're all three making offers, the wholesaler has to get it for less than what he and I can pay for it, because he's got to have enough room to turn around and wholesale it to me or Wyatt. Now, I'm not saying that to discourage you, but that just goes to show like there's a place for all of it, right? So that's why you need to be multifaceted and learn a little bit of everything. And then along the way, you determine, what am I the best at and what makes the most sense for the life that I want to lead, So, yeah, I mean, we personally, and him, Wyatt included, we do a little bit of all these things. There's still a place for rentals, as far as tax advantages are concerned, rentals are amazing. So yeah, there's a place for all these things. We look at it on a deal by deal basis. And then we also look at it from a cash perspective. If you've got 2 or 3 flips going on at one time and you're strapped for cash, and I come across the 4th deal that I could technically wholesale and make some quick cash, then probably going to do that, because you can have a million flips going on, but if nothing's generating revenue, you're going to go out of business or go upside down. So there's a place for all of it, guys. Like the most experienced flippers still wholesale from time to time. The most experienced buy and hold guys, seller finance guys, still wholesale from time to time. And all of them will, generally still flip here and there depending on what's going on with the market. So yeah, we're not saying that any one of them is better than the other. They all have their pros and they all have their cons.
Yep. With that being said, you guys need to holler at us if you want that free bundle with the calculators and the scripts and the presentations and stuff like that. Just DM us. We're more than happy to share our resources with you. Maybe you heard something and you're like, man, I'd like to do some of that wholesaling, or I'd like to do that seller financing, or I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want to do or what I should do. Then you should go to ascendyoursuccess.com and you should have a conversation with me and Jacob personally. And we can kind of help guide you based on your situation, where you're at, and you talk to us directly and personally. So whether you're in or you're out, we'll see you on the next episode.
Take care, guys.